God, this is frustrating. Okay. Hi, Alex. Is this working? I'm seeing a dog right in front of me. So cute. Um, it's really frustrating. I know. I'm trying to figure out. I've never used a WebEx. Trying to see if maybe a Zoom meeting would work, but I don't want you all to give me your email IDs. This is so frustrating. Okay. Honestly, if it happens, I'm trying to figure out a WebEx way to do this. I'm gonna send you an invite for that. But if it doesn't happen, I'm just gonna cancel this, and I can, just record a lecture, even though I'm going to be very pissed off about it. But it's okay. If it happens again, though, for now this is working, so we are going to stick to it. All right, there's 9 people there. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing in terms of violating. It says my face right here. Trying to teach people. Good morning. Uh, Hi, Vu. I'm glad you were able to join us this time. I just want to reach that like golden 4 or 5 minute mark, and after that, hopefully nothing is going to happen. Uh, Meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out a WebEx, but I don't know how to do it because nobody told me. Okay. All right, 12 people in here. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I was hoping that I have WebEx and it's I'm trying to sign into it, but it keeps asking me to enter a site URL. Not entirely sure what that means, but I am trying to figure out. Wow, this is more frustrating than I thought it would be. Mm. All right, I'm just gonna wait 2 more minutes, see how many more people come in, and then I will start the lecture. Once again, for anyone joining us right now or who did not join us in the previous 2 failed videos, the presentation is up on Canvas. You can go ahead, access it right now after the Whether after the lecture, that's totally up to you, but it is there on Canvas should you need to access it. Just 2 more minutes and four people. It's not a bad number. Hi, Annie. All right, it is 12:35 p.m. and before this goes on, maybe um, it's better to start right away. All right, so welcome everybody to yet another YouTube live lecture. I promise that by next our next synchronous meeting, we will have another method figured out. Even though I really like this because you don't have to necessarily show your face, and I understand that you're sitting comfortably in your homes, but maybe doing a Zoom or a WebEx next time might be better because of the issues that it sometimes has. I'm going to once again say the presentation is in files, in the file section of Canvas. You can go ahead, open it up if you want. If you don't want that, that's fine. Also, everything that most of the things that I'm talking about are also in the book, chapter 7. All of the details are there. So whatever bullet points that I'm talking about here, all of those, the details of it that I'm going to explain here, obviously, are all available on in your book. So you can go ahead, look at chapter 7 of your book, and you can take your things, your stuff from there. So we've talked a lot about, content, post, social media, all of those things. But the game really, we do develop content. We can develop videos, we can develop memes, GIFs, all of those things. But a lot actually relies on how we word these things. So strategically writing what it is that we want to tell our audience or our consumers. Now, and I immediately go back. One of the first examples that comes to my mind is Grounds for Thought, because while they have some great posts, they have chunks of texts, right? That's something that's so notable about them. They'll have these huge chunks of text that nobody would really want to read them, and especially when you're scrolling through, maybe right when you woke up, you don't want to read all of that because it's just ground for thoughts. You need something that's more attractive, um as opposed to a Wendy's, and just the tweet appears on your timeline and you're just like, hey, this is fun, they are so cool and interesting, and they make you chuckle, they make you laugh, and somewhere in your head, when you start thinking about something funny, you kind of automatically make that connection, start thinking about Wendy. So there is some kind of connection that people start making, or your audience starts making, with your brand. So that's where your social media writing practices really come in handy, and why you need to make sure that you are doing it very, very well. So before you get into writing it, of course, we need to figure out brand voice and the tone of your social media writing and your social media account. So that's one of the main things. Of course, we've talked about brand mission, vision, brand personality. All of these things kind of are the larger things, and then you keep narrowing it down. And the one thing that comes to you is brand voice. It's very important. Um, Obviously, it's not a new concept. It's not something that's specific to maybe social media. Ever since advertisements had been developed, that kind of keeps you start talking about what is it that we want our audiences to know. So what is a brand voice? Essentially, it's a characteristic of your particular brand, or a history that makes you memorable to your key audiences. Your key audiences know that this is the personality of your brand. It's spunky, it's educational. What kind of what is their overall personality that it exhibits? These personality characteristics are very unique to your brand. I mean, they could exist otherwise, but the combination of those characteristics is unique to your brand. They are memorable and authentic to your particular brand. So what is it? What are some of the things that you are thinking that you want to emit? Is your personality friendly? Is your personality more reserved and more informational and professional? Is your personality more inviting and conversational? You're like, hey, okay, what's up? Things like that. Um, your social media account, you have to treat your brand as a person, and your social media account is the representation of that personality or that person. So that's kind of what you're looking at when you think about the brand voice. This is the main thing here. It is the brand voice essentially will be uniform across everything, across all of your advertisements. So across print, TV, social media, whatever advertising that you do for your brand, the brand voice remains constant throughout these platforms, because that's your personality. Think about yourself, whether you're talking to an official, or whether you are talking to me, or whether you're talking to your siblings or your friends, your overall personality would remain the same. That's what you are looking at when you look at the brand voice. That personality will be the same. And also, it should be available at every customer touch point. So not just on your advertising platforms, but also maybe you get a call from a customer regarding one of your products. That personality should even reflect during that interaction with your consumer or your customer or your audience as well. Just to use couple of examples, Coca-Cola has this personality of happiness and joy, which is conveyed through a friendly advertising of their products. And if you looked at the various discussion posts that we got, a couple of them were Coca-Cola. So many of their advertisements are, just about friendliness and the world, or just coming together. But there is a joy in it. There is an element of let's come together as a community in it, and their friendliness is their brand voice. That's their personality, and that their happiness and joy, all of that is conveyed through a certain friendliness. Nike has a more get up and go do it inspirational personality. Nike is your friend. Nike is that friend of yours that's constantly working out, but is not being condescending about it. So that's important. So Nike is that person who is really conscious about their health, who's really conscious about what they're doing, what they're eating, and at the same time they're going to keep coming and like talking to you about it. So that's Nike's personality. So the things that you should be thinking about when you start thinking about what your brand voice is going to be. Maybe you've just come into a brand, maybe you've just been hired by a brand, or maybe you're developing your own brand and you want to see what can your brand voice be. So number one, you want to think, how do we want our audiences to feel? Now, when a Nike is advertising with its workout sessions and with its personality of, oh, I'm so healthy, they want their audience not to feel condescended by it, but they want their audience to feel inspired by it. They want their audience to feel like, oh, this is a good lifestyle that I can follow. So that's one of the main things that you're looking at. How do you want your audience to feel? Number two is, what are some of the adjectives that you can use to describe yourself? Just, here you can think about, are you authentic? Is your personality so authentic? Every time you talk to somebody, you're honest about it. Or is your personality more reserved? Do you talk to people just for informational purposes, and you just kind of end it at that? So what are some of the adjectives that you can use to describe yourself? Number three, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition? So what is the brand voice of your competition? How are they representing themselves? How can you be different? How can you be similar if you want to be? That's also one of the things that you should be thinking about. Also think about, if you were a celebrity, what would your personality be like? So just talking about brand voice here and not tone, but just the voice of Chrissy Teigen is one of somebody who cares, but who also does not give a bleep about anything else, anything that's oppressive or that's bad. uh, there is a certain caring personality that comes out because, with the personality, with the way that she portrays her family, the way that she portrays a relationship with her husband, with her children, there is an overall personality that comes to what her tone is. We will get to it in just a second. So if you were a celebrity, if your brand was a celebrity, what would your personality be like? What would be your brand voice then? And finally, if you are joining in after maybe a brand has been in existence for a while, look at previous content to figure out the brand voice, or maybe you want to change the brand voice. So you're just going to have to look at the various other things that the content has said to you or to their audiences, and what does it look like, what does it say. That's also going to help you figure out your brand voice. So that's these the personality, essentially a base personality. Think about it yourself. What are you like? That's what you are looking to discover in a brand as you just try to figure out what their brand voice is. Questions? Any questions? The good thing is that I'm definitely not going to take too much time of yours as I go through this presentation. I'm going to finish it ASAP so that you can get back to doing your activities for this right now or later, whenever it is. Okay, feel free to type on as the previous time. Feel free to type in any questions, and I can answer them as we go. So this is about brand voice. We have decided that this is going to be our personality, but that personality also needs to be conveyed. So how are we conveying this personality? That's where tone comes in. The tone is the overall voice characteristic that you want to interject with the content that you're writing. So to start with the example that I just ended with, the Chrissy Teigen example, she has this personality where she portrays herself to be caring, wife, mother, somebody who loves cooking, all of those things. But at the same time, her tone is that of the one very sparky and spunky. She knows when to moderate it, but especially when somebody messes with her, that tone kind of takes a different personality altogether. You get that spark, you get that spunk, you get that no nonsense thing from her. So how do you wish to represent your personality in different settings is what your tone really is. It is tailored depending on the situation, the channel, or the audience in question. So and since you've talked about this so much, Wendy's knows that its audience on Twitter is a very certain kind of audience. They know who they are catering to, so they can afford to do that really easily because they know that they're going to get that thing back from them. If you actually look at a lot of other brands, and if you think about all of these comebacks that happen, maybe Merriam-Webster dictionary, sometimes they have comebacks. If you think about Netflix has a lot of comebacks. If you compare that to their Instagram, you will never see that. Just go to Netflix US, their Instagram account and their Twitter account. They have similar content, but you will never see comebacks happening as their main content on Instagram. Instagram is more about images, it's more about what should you watch, etc., etc., all of those things, but they're a lot snarkier on Twitter. So when you think about your tone, that's how you kind of figure it out. And think about it yourself. If you obviously have a base personality, but your tone is going to change depending on whether you're talking to me or whether you're talking to your siblings, whether you're talking to your grandparents, or whether you're talking to an elected official. Kind of changes, right, for every person. But your personality doesn't change for everybody. You won't just, if you're talking to me versus when your personality won't just change from, maybe you're rebellious, that's your personality, it's not just going to change, but the way you convey to me your disagreement with me on something, it's going to completely differ from how you're going to convey that disagreement to your sibling or your friend. So that's kind of what you're looking at when you say tone. That's what you're looking at. It also must be specifically characteristic, kind of aligned specifically to the characteristics of the area that the tone has to go in. So again, whether it is social media, what social media it is, whether it is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, where are you going to see that happening? That's kind of what happens. Even in, I think there are a few comebacks that happen in Facebook as well, but they often happen in the comment section. The main content is often not snarky for a lot of brands. So Twitter is, kind of that place where these things happen. Um, your tone is going to get affected by key demographics, psychographics, and the location of your community, as I just said. And even with your parents, think about talking to them. How do you talk to them normally on a daily basis versus when they might be a little, mad at you? So these are the ways in which your tone will kind of change when you're talking to different people, but your personality remains the same. Now if you go on to the presentation that I've uploaded, there is a little chart right here. Sorry if you can see it. You can go ahead and check that out. It just gives this is just like just an example of what your voice characteristic can be, and what is what is its description, and then what are the do's and don'ts for it. So if you are maybe you have a passionate brand where your personality is informative, you want people to know about everything, and your tone is that of a really passionate individual who cares, who wants people to know constantly, and there's a very informational aspect to it. So the description of it would be, we are passionate about changing the way the world works. That's the description of passionate. That's how you chose to describe yourself. So what you're supposed to do here is use strong verbs, be champion for your industry, be the cheerleaders for your industry. So that's where you kind of become that, your tone embodies your personality in that way. um, don't use passive voice. Don't be lukewarm or wishy-washy. So you can't just be like your content can't just fall flat. If you are portraying yourself to be passionate, be proactive, use active voice. All of those things matter a lot. And in general, actually, for any content writing, for any caption writing, don't use passive voice. Always use an active voice. Always use an engaging voice. Ask questions if you have to. Always have a little bit of a call to action if you can, all of those things. So that's something that you're looking at. And then there are more examples in that chart if you go ahead and look at that. Uh, and to have a little bit a description of how it could visually look is, think of an ice cream right here. So if this is an ice cream, the base flavor of the ice cream is vanilla, of course. I love vanilla flavored ice cream, by the way. Chocolate sucks. Um, that's essentially your brand voice. That's your personality, and the little sprinkles on top, that becomes the tone of your brand. So your tone aids your personality depending on which situation you are in. Now, if you are, you're in a fun mood, you take the vanilla ice cream and you put sprinklers on it. Maybe you are in a different mood, so you take the ice cream and you put chocolate sauce on it. Based on what you want at that moment, you decide to top your ice cream accordingly. So similarly, brand voice and tone work. That's how they kind of work. Any questions? Take a 10-15 second break. Think about any questions that you might have. Mhm. All right. Also, if you go on to table 7.1 on your book, in your book, you will find a little sample writing guide for social media, where they give you a little bit of what platform should have what kind of a writing style, and what would be the different approaches. So, for example, on Facebook, if you have an advertisement or a video, the audience here are your exact customers, the marketing pros. The voice should be engaged and interested in purchases. That's what your brand voice generally should be. Your writing style, professional, brand, product, and brand focused, audience focused, and finally should have at the end a call to action with a specific purpose and a specific kind of link that, okay, this is what you have to do. So if you can just go ahead and look at table 7.1 in your book, you will be able to find that. Now, when you talk about brand tone, what is your writing tone? There are a few kind of categories already available to you. So now all of these again are in the book if you go on to chapter 7. But what I want to do is go through at least some of them and then give you a few examples of it, of the existing brands that use this kind of writing. So, number one, of course, there is a professional writing space. So, General Motors, for example, uses that way a lot, where you're giving the information, where you're kind of making sure that people know you. You have a very, even when you're advertising and not really promoting a product necessarily or a service necessarily, there is a very professional tone to it. So that's one. Number two, obviously snarky and spunky. We see that in so many brands, especially on Twitter. We just talked about it. Top of the game is Wendy's. That's something that does that a lot. Product and brand focus. So maybe here, every time you put out a social media post, it is essentially about a product. It is always about something that kind of you are selling, or a service that you're selling, that's or something about your brand. So that's what a product and brand focused voice would be. For example, Under Armour does that. They always have, they always take advantage of whatever product they have, whatever is going on. They kind of push that more in and make sure that you are directed towards their product after, sorry about that, after looking for or kind of looking at their advertisement. um, Audience focused, are you entirely focused on, you could also be entirely focused on how exactly who your audience is, what does your audience do when they are in your store, and kind of take it from there, see what you want for that. If you go to Target, and I have that example as well, Target's social media is constantly asking questions, doing things that are, it's really interesting. I actually went through it, and they are looking at these tweets that people make about Target, or shopping in Target, and then they kind of bring that together. So, for example, their feed was mostly about one of the tweets said, "I wish somebody would hold my hand while Target shopping," or they had a little puppy over there, but just really tailored to the audience that comes and shops in Target, and that's kind of how they go about it. You have an inspirational writing style where obviously Nike, but you have you're constantly like pushing people. Starbucks also actually has a really inspirational writing style. They're actually famous for that, where they're telling people to wake up, do their thing, etc., and obviously buy their product at the same time. Conversational, you always have a question for your audience. You're constantly engaging with your audience. Dunkin' Donuts, if you check out their social media, they're actually one of the most successful social media marketing that kind of brand, and they have a very conversation. They're constantly wanting to engage their audiences. They constantly want to make sure that the audience is commenting on it or sharing their things, or some of the other things. Are you witty? Excuse me. Are you using that wittiness all the time? Do you have quick, clever comebacks that are not necessarily snarky, but just generally witty? Finally, educational. Do you want your audiences to learn more, know more about you, about your brand, or even about just the theme that you're looking for? So, for example, Sephora, they don't just have their brand products being advertised, but they would also have, okay, how to do your makeup, or how to figure out skincare, what are different types of skincare, all of those things. And finally, you could have personality focused. So here is where your brand voice and tone go together all the time, no matter what the platform. So you want to make sure that the audiences understand you as a more human in their eyes, and they make sure that there is a traditional company, but also it's memorable, it's entertaining, not in funny ways, but in general as a human connection way. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you're personality focused. If you go to the presentation, you will see how there are these various things that are happening on different platforms. So if you look at Merriam-Webster, and these are all examples of how every company or every brand has a social media tone based on their personality, but it could change based on the situation. So, for example, there's a great example of Merriam-Webster where essentially what it's a dictionary website, right? They are deciding what new words are there, what old words are there. But at the same time, every time something funny happens, they almost always have a snarky comment to it. So they're responding to the situation, but they don't change their entire tone of their brand, right? So for example, somebody tweeted at them saying, "Why don't you just add funner to the dictionary, you monsters?" Tweeting at Merriam-Webster. And their Twitter account immediately responded to them saying, "Why don't you look words up before complaining to the dictionary?" Because that actually was a word in their dictionary, and the link that they attached to it was, "Don't argue with the dictionary." So it's a fun thing, a fun way to go about it, but does not correspond with their usual tone. So they kind of had that going for that particular incident. Similarly, Sanofi US, it's a pharmaceutical brand um, that manufactures medicine. There was an incident where somebody was being racist, and they said that they actually had a sleeping pill that was manufactured by Sanofi US. And because of that sleeping pill was why they started to have these racist comments. So, in response to that, without tagging anybody, without necessarily saying anything, and they usually have a very informational, professional thing going on. But in response to that, they started saying, "People of all races, religions, and nationalities work at Sanofi every day to improve the lives of people around the world. While all pharmaceutical treatments have side effects, racism is not a known side effect of any Sanofi medication." So, smart, witty, not particularly snarky, but really addressing the situation that they were in at that point. So, this is, again, a few examples of how you're going to have to kind of adjust to the situation. Adidas, what they do is, again, have a very informational personality, inspirational personality, where they're constantly pushing people to do good. But they actually had a really tone deaf email to their audiences or to the consumers, where they said, "Well, congratulations on surviving the Boston Marathon." Not in good light at all. They knew that they had messed up, and when it came up on social media, they did not bother too much with it. They did not bother to make fancy posts out of it. They simply just posted a one informational message which said, "We are incredibly sorry. Clearly, there was no thought given to the insensitive email subject line we sent Tuesday. Excuse me. We deeply apologize for our mistake." End of story. No nonsense, no fanciness, informational to the point. They changed their tone for that particular situation. And again, there are more examples. You go to the presentation again, there's Dunkin', like I already talked about, Target, and Nike. You should also, in general, check out their social media, see how they are going about it. GE, for example, has a very educational and informational kind of social media going on, where um, it's engagement as well, but they actually put up this post called, "What would Thomas Alva Edison think of smartphones?" And then people have kind of just talking about that, engaging with it one way or the other. Now, comments obviously can range from anywhere to anywhere, but it does increase their engagement. So, for example, somebody comments saying, um, you know, uh, "Just what the heck is this button for?" That's what Edison can say. Or somebody said, "Oh, that's not a good comment," but just it's not up to them to kind of moderate those comments. I mean, I think it's going to be difficult for you as social media manager to kind of moderate every single comment that you get, but you are getting engagement nevertheless. So that's something that also happens. So these are some of the tones that you can adopt as you start writing for your social media. Some of the things that you should remember as you start writing content and have some strategy to writing that: as always, research your content. Whatever it is that you're going to put out, make sure that you have a very good idea of how you are building it. All of those things. Make sure that you know you know what you're talking about, as opposed to, for example, the the Adidas incident. There was clearly a miscommunication, or there was clearly some kind of somebody was completely blinded by this not knowing of what can be the implication of "you survived the Boston Marathon." Number two is think about all the possible reactions that could be to your to the post. It could be negative, it could be positive, it could be neutral. You could get absolutely no engagement. Make sure that you are assessing all of those reactions before you post that content. So that's going to be very, very helpful for you. I've said this before, and I'm going to say this again. Don't jump on the bandwagon without thinking. So there should not be any trend jacking without you actually putting some thought into it. So that's also very important. Something that you should not be doing at all. And take help. Take help of Grammarly. It's one of the most one of the best actually ways that'll help you in your writing. If you are working for a social media if you're working as social media manager, it's more likely that you are going to be given access to the paid version of Grammarly. Then I was working as a journalist. I never used it because I was really conceited. In retrospect, that was a bad idea. But every desktop that we used had Grammarly installed so that we could use it for our writing and everything. There is also SlickWrite or Trello, and there are several other kind of softwares that will help you write these things. Also, some of the things that you should be remembering as you write for these for your platforms. Remember brevity. Again, having a half a page long post is not going to help anybody. Having a ton of text on the image is not going to help anyone. So make sure the idea is not to have the maximum in a social media world. That impact is going to come from 700 words. So avoid doing that entirely. If you have particular social media, do not have a lot of words there. Don't force a writing style. If you want to be spunky, you've decided that, okay, I'm going to do that, but doesn't really align with your brand voice, doesn't align with your brand personality, and you're really confused about it. Don't force it. You don't have to be witty. You can be smart, you can be good and informational, and you can resonate with your audiences without doing any of that. So as you start developing that tone, don't think that you have to be a certain something. Base everything on your brand personality. You have to put your audience to share this. That's their reaction. That should be their reaction to your content, to whatever you post. And that's the power with words. If you don't have a certain strategic writing style, it's going to be very difficult to have that. Embrace the idea that you are messaging first and selling later. So the first thing that you do on social media is not hard selling or of your product, but telling people about your brand. That's one of the that you're going to push your brands into people's daily lives, and that's how you're going to increase sales. So embrace the idea of messaging instead of simply just, oh, buy this product or buy this shampoo or buy this coffee or any of those things. Consistency is also really important. If you have a certain tone on Twitter, maintain it. If you have a certain tone on Facebook, maintain that. Don't keep switching for no rhyme or reason. You can switch that, as we talked about, based on a situation, but don't switch that for no rhyme or reason. As you are as you are working on your own social media accounts, plus you might also be working for a brand, try to maintain that balance. A lot of times your own personality is going to spill over. Avoid that entirely. We know the consequences of that are bad. A lot of times that has led to a lot of mishaps in brand social media of various brands. So avoid that entirely. Don't try to have a balance between your own personality and the personality of the brand that you are working for. Any questions, any comments, or any ideas? Anything that I said that rang a bell? Okay, this is what I saw. Anything that you might have. Anything at all? Well, okay, so before I leave, and again, this is in the presentation as well, what I want you to do for this is go back to your content calendar. what we have been doing this entire time is throwing around ideas. We've been throwing around, oh, this is what we can do. And some great ideas came through in the discussion post that we had yesterday. So we saw a lot of ideas happening. But what I want you to do now is kind of have some kind of a concrete example. So we did that for content last week. That's something that you all did, and also that was a fantastic job. I really loved some of the content, and I felt dumb in retrospect that I felt like that should also have been a discussion post so that everybody could see the really good content that everybody else is producing. So this time also for this, we're going to have a more discussion post based thing where I want you to go back to your content calendar. You all produce some content. So you'll produce some content for a brand. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to describe in a few words the brand voice or tone of your chosen store. So what would be their brand voice or tone? You developed a calendar, so pick a day from that calendar. It doesn't have to be Women's Day. If you want to stick to Women's Day, that's totally, or Women's History Month. If you want to stick to that, that's fine. But preferably pick a day that's not on that theme and write a copy. So this time you're not developing the content, but you're writing a copy embodying the brand voice on any one platform. So there should be a specific tone to that copy. There should be a specific that it should reflect the personality of the brand voice, and it could be a tweet, it could be an Instagram post caption only, and it could be a Facebook post caption only. So if you were, how would you put in these writing skills that you've just learned into these posts, into the caption of these posts, so that they reflect the brand voice and the tone of whatever you've chosen? If you don't want to stick to your store and you want to talk about the other exercise that we did, if you want to take something for that, that is completely cool too. It's totally up to you. But what I really need to know through that exercise is that you have understood the concept of brand voice and tone. Questions about that? Any questions? All right then. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is in this. Oh, yeah. So you can go ahead. N- um. So not a fake post really. I mean, you can just go ahead and just describe the voice and tone of the store of their social media and how they want to portray themselves, and then write a caption for it. So for example, a lot of you had. That's fine, Alex. You can still go ahead and complete that. So you have basically, if you were to post an image, if you were to post an image and then write a caption to it, or even if you want to add words to an image, what would the copy say? What would be the caption for it? And if you want to call it a fake post, that's totally cool too. But essentially, I'm looking at your writing skills, not so much because as I just said, we've been throwing around a lot of ideas. So here is where your writing skills are really being put to test. Not you as an individual, but you as a social media person. I'm not looking at your grammar or whatever, but I'm looking at whether in your writing that particular post, you are able to reflect you're able to reflect the kind of the tone and the brand voice of the store that you've chosen or the brand that you've chosen. Any other questions? For I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean our store? How do I okay, I'm not sure I understand your question, but I'm gonna just say that what you need to do again. I just need you to say whatever store or brand that you've chosen. Just say their name and then go ahead and describe their tone or their brand voice and tone in just a few words. I don't need a paragraph. Oh yeah. You can say that. So yeah, store, cookie jar, brand voice and tone, da da da, whatever. You can just say they have a friendly personality with an informational tone. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, right? Does that make a little bit more sense? And then you have maybe if you want to put all the text in the picture, or if you want to put a caption in it, that's totally up to you. But it's words that I'm looking at, and not content. So if you were to publish a content, yeah, okay. So if you were to publish content, how would you caption it? So I'm looking at the writing part of it, not necessarily the content of it. That's kind of what, because again, like I said, some of the things that we talked about, the tone should be reflected in that. So maybe, a lot of you had memes to share with me when we did the content calendar activity. So if you were captioning that meme, what would you say? And does even when you're making that meme, does that really reflect the personality, the brand voice, and does it have the tone that the store kind of has had this entire time with its posts? Any other questions? So, okay. If you have any questions, as always, you can email me. I will open up this assignment. It is due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. If you have it by then, that's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to grade everything over the weekend. If you can do that, that's fantastic. Otherwise, as I have said before, it's all going to be available until the end of the semester if you're unable to complete it right now. Um, there is another discussion due on Friday, so there's going to be no lectures posted. There's just a reading that you have to do, and there's going to be a few questions about that. I will post those questions on Canvas by tonight, so you can take care of that. And the next lecture to so to speak that I will upload will be, just give me 1 second. So of course, there's going to be the next guest lecture that I'm going to upload next week, which is should be Wednesday. But next week, we are talking about personal and professional branding, and we're going to look at that. Next week's Friday would probably be nothing. If you want to complete the case race, that's totally up to you, because in the syllabus we don't have anything. If you want to talk to me, we can have a WebEx session one-on-one. But essentially, this is the last lecture until Monday and Wednesday this week. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for being here today. I'm sorry about the mishap. Let's try to do a WebEx next week, and I will see you all then. Goodbye.